I walked into the clinic thinking I'd schedule a simple vasectomy. Freedom from more chaos, that's all I wanted. But when the doctor looked up from his papers, his face went pale. He told me I was practically infertile. 0 sperm count. I laughed and said, that can't be right, I've got 3 kids at home. But he didn't laugh. He just stared at me with pity. That's when my whole world cracked open. And the truth I uncovered next destroyed everything I thought I knew. Before we get into the story, we'd love for you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support truly helps us keep creating more content. And now to the story. I don't think I'm a good person. If anything, this is the story of one bad person getting revenge on another bad person. Some people tell stories to prove they were the hero in the end. I'm not interested in that. I'm here to tell you how life can twist a man, how betrayal can set fire to everything inside him, and how sometimes you don't rebuild, you scorch the earth and walk away. My name is Michael Kane. I'm 35 years old now, but when all of this started, I was just 23. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, in a house that never felt whole. My dad died when I was 10. Heart attack, at least that's the official story, but the older I got, the more I suspected the truth wasn't that simple. What I do know for certain is that my mother was left alone to raise me, and she clung to religion like it was a life raft in a storm. My mom was one of those women who could be both tender and suffocating in the same breath. Every time she smiled at me, there was this undercurrent of worry, like she was afraid I'd be swallowed by the world the way my father was. She filled every silence with scripture, dragged me to every church meeting, every Sunday potluck, every Wednesday night prayer group. When other kids were riding their bikes or sneaking out to parties, I was sitting in a folding chair in some dusty church basement, listening to sermons about purity and sin. I was the chubby kid, the quiet one, the boy who sat in the corner at recess with a book instead of joining the basketball game. Kids are cruel when they smell weakness, and I had it written all over me. They called me Meatball, Church Boy, Fat Mikey. The worst part wasn't the name calling, it was that I believed them. I looked in the mirror and saw a boy who didn't belong anywhere. By the time I was a teenager, I'd found my refuge, the glow of a computer screen. While other kids were sneaking beers or making out behind the bleachers, I was deep into coding forums, teaching myself how to build little programs, hacking together websites nobody would ever see. My world was pixels and keyboards, safe from the rejection of real life. I told myself I didn't need friends. I told myself I didn't care about the girls who laughed when I tried to talk to them. But late at night, lying awake, I felt it. That ache, that bone-deep loneliness. My mother used to tell me, "Save yourself for the right one, Michael. Don't throw yourself away like other boys do." And like a fool, I listened. While everyone else experimented with love and lust, I waited. By 20, I was still a virgin, still painfully awkward, still living at home, hiding in the safety of my routines. Then I met her. Her name was Vanessa Cruz. She was 27, a single mom with a little boy who was barely 2 years old. We met through my mom's church group. I remember the first time I saw her, bright dress, hair pulled back, laughing too loudly at something one of the older ladies said. She wasn't like the others. Where they whispered and smiled politely, she commanded the room. She was bold, electric, the kind of woman who made you forget where you were. For someone like me, who had spent most of his life in the shadows, she was the sun. The first time she spoke to me directly, I nearly choked on my words. She asked if I could fix her laptop. Her kid had spilled juice on the keyboard. I nodded so fast I probably looked like a bobblehead. That was my in. We met up outside of church at her apartment. I sat at her kitchen table, tinkering with her laptop, while she leaned against the counter and told me about her life. How hard it was raising a kid alone, how she wanted more for herself, how she was tired of being judged. Something inside me cracked open that day. She looked at me, not through me, not past me, but at me. And for a man who had felt invisible his whole life, that kind of attention was intoxicating. Within weeks, I was hooked. Within months, I was in love. Her little boy started calling me Dad. The first time he said it, I froze, my heart twisting in ways I didn't understand. Nobody had ever looked at me with that kind of need, that kind of innocence. Suddenly, I wasn't just Michael, the awkward computer nerd. I was Dad, I belonged. 6 months into dating, Vanessa got pregnant. I remember the way she told me, hands shaking, eyes wide, a mix of fear and hope. And me, I dropped to one knee with a ring. I thought, this is it. This is what life is supposed to feel like. This is my chance to be everything my father never was. That's when she dropped her first bomb on me. She was still legally married to a man sitting in prison. Did that scare me off? No. I told myself love was messy, that people made mistakes, that I could save her. I thought I was the good guy who could fix her broken past. That naive belief, that savior complex, was the biggest mistake of my life. The red flags started piling up, but I was too blind to see them. She admitted she only came to church to look good for her probation hearings. She insisted on keeping her part-time job even though I was making 6 figures in IT, which meant my mom was stuck babysitting more often than not. Her phone was full of hundreds of contacts, men, women, strangers. Like, what kind of suburban mom has that many friends? Every time I asked, she brushed it off. Don't be paranoid, Michael. You're lucky to have me. Our wedding kept getting delayed again and again, always with excuses. A lost document here, a family emergency there. But I ignored it all because I was madly in love. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone, and I clung to that like it was oxygen. 4 years later, Vanessa gave birth again, this time to twins. I'll never forget that night. I was packing the sterile hospital hallway, chewing the inside of my cheek while machines beeped and nurses hurried past. I wasn't just a scared first-time father anymore. I was the man responsible for a family of 4 children. Me, Michael Kane, the boy who couldn't even look his classmates in the eye, now stood in a delivery ward pretending to be the backbone of a family. When the twins arrived, I thought my heart would split open. They were tiny, fragile, screaming bundles of life. I told myself I was the luckiest man alive, but deep inside, a darker thought gnawed at me. How am I supposed to carry this weight? Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Our apartment filled with diapers, bottles, the constant shrieks of Barbies, and the bone-deep exhaustion that came from never sleeping more than 2 hours at a time. Vanessa was overwhelmed, so I stepped up, or at least I thought I did. I took night shifts when I could, balanced work with midnight feedings, rocked crying Barbies while debugging code for clients. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Vanessa's demands grew louder, sharper. She criticized the way I held the Barbies, the way I folded laundry, even the way I breathed when she was tired. Arguments became a nightly ritual. The more I tried to appease her, the more she pushed. And yet I stayed, because that's what I thought love was supposed to be: endurance, sacrifice. But after the twins, something shifted inside me. I began to consider a vasectomy. Not because I didn't love the children I was raising, but because I felt like I was drowning. Every month felt like a sprint I couldn't keep up with. If I didn't set some kind of boundary, I was sure I'd collapse. So I went to see a doctor. I remember the smell of antiseptic in the clinic, the hum of fluorescent lights, the way the waiting room chair squeaked beneath me as I shifted nervously. I thought it would be a simple consultation. A quick procedure, a little pain, then freedom from more chaos. But when the doctor called me into his office, his face was too serious. He didn't speak right away. He shuffled papers, tapped his pen, cleared his throat. Then he said words that hit me like a hammer. Michael, your sperm count is nearly 0. You're practically infertile. For a moment, I just stared at him, sure I'd misheard. Then I laughed, a dry, nervous sound. That can't be right, I said. I have 3 kids at home. He didn't laugh, he just looked at me with pity. That look, that silence, was worse than any insult. I left the clinic in a fog. I didn't even drive home. I just walked. The hot Phoenix sun beat down on me, but I barely felt it. My legs carried me block after block, until day turned to night, until the neon glow of convenience stores and street lamps blurred together. I was a ghost haunting my own city. Eventually, my steps carried me to the one place I knew I'd find someone who still saw me as her little boy. My mother's house. When she opened the door, I broke. Years of bottled-up emotions spilled out. I sank onto her couch, sobbing like a child. She stroked my hair, whispered scripture, told me I was strong, that God had a plan. But then, she told me a truth I was never meant to hear. Michael, you weren't your father's son either. Her voice cracked as she confessed it. She had an affair. My father found out. He couldn't bear it. He overdosed not long after. I sat there numb, as her words rearranged everything I thought I knew about my life. My father's death wasn't just tragedy, it was betrayal. My mother wasn't just a grieving widow, she was the architect of his despair. And me, I wasn't even the son he thought he had. It was like the floor collapsed beneath me. My entire identity dissolved in that moment. I was Michael, the loyal son. I was the bastard product of betrayal. I went home in silence. When I walked through the door, I saw Vanessa in the living room, her phone glowing in her hand, laughter spilling from her lips as she texted God knows who. The twins cried in the background. Her eldest tugged at her sleeve for attention. She barely noticed. I looked at her, I looked at the children who called me daddy, and for the first time, I felt nothing but rage. My mother begged me afterward to man up, to stay, to honor my commitment, but something inside me had snapped. For the first time in my life, I stopped being the pushover. I started plotting. I spoke to lawyers. Their answers were worse than I imagined. It didn't matter that Vanessa and I were never legally married. The court saw me as a father. That meant child support, division of property. losing everything I'd worked for, paying until I went to the grave for children who weren't even mine. The injustice of it lit a fire in me. So I made my decision. I wasn't going to fight this in court. I wasn't going to play by their rules. I was going to burn it all down. The sabotage began small. I started neglecting my freelance projects, letting my passive income streams rot. I accidentally missed deadlines, let clients slip away, stopped updating systems I knew would collapse without me. Money that once flowed steadily began to dry up. At my IT job, I staged my downfall with theatrical flair. I sent memes instead of status reports, slacked off during crucial projects, even pulled a stunt straight out of Office Space, dragging a busted office printer into the courtyard and smashing it with a baseball bat while my stunned coworkers watched. HR couldn't fire me fast enough. Meanwhile, I quietly drained our joint accounts. Not all at once, slowly, subtly, like water leaking from a cracked pipe. I shifted money into places Vanessa couldn't reach, leaving her only a few $1,000s to cling to while the credit card debt piled up. I watched with grim satisfaction as the comfortable life she thought she had began to crumble piece by piece. The fancy groceries were replaced by store-brand knockoffs. The shopping sprees stopped. Her laughter dimmed. And then I vanished. I told everyone I was going on a hiking trip in Colorado Springs. I hyped it up for weeks, bought gear, left maps on the counter, spun stories about mountain air and needing time to clear my head. The day I left, I took Vanessa's oldest boy for ice cream. He was 6 years old then, old enough to sense that something was off. We sat in a booth, his little legs kicking against the vinyl seat while I tried to hold myself together. I cried in front of him, apologized over and over, even though he couldn't possibly understand why. He just stared at me with wide, confused eyes. That was the last time he ever saw me. I didn't go hiking, I disappeared. 6 months later, I was living under a new name in a new city. Clean-shaven, 60 pounds lighter, unrecognizable. I rebuilt my IT career from scratch, kept my head down and stalked Vanessa online for entertainment. Watching her beg for money on Facebook, seeing her post desperate pleas for help, watching the life she thought she'd secured with me fall apart before her eyes. It was pure catharsis. But then she pulled the stunt that changed everything. On the 1-year anniversary of my disappearance, Vanessa posted a memorial for me. She told the world I was dead. And my mother backed her up. The months following the courtroom battles, media exposure, and the shocking unraveling of Samantha's schemes should have felt like victory. In a sense, they were. The truth was finally laid bare for the world to see. The woman who had manipulated, lied, and even faked her own husband's death was no longer free to toy with lives as though they were disposable pawns. Yet, when I looked in the mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that justice had come at a price I wasn't sure I had been prepared to pay. Revenge is supposed to taste sweet, or at least that's what I had always believed. But the reality, it tasted bitter, like ashes that lingered on the tongue, refusing to fade. After the sentencing, Samantha's name became shorthand in the local community for scandal and betrayal. Newspapers ran headline after headline, digging into her past, her frauds, her betrayals. People whispered about her in cafes, in grocery stores, even in churches. Her face, once the polished mask of respectability, was now a symbol of disgrace. But her downfall didn't erase the damage. Families who had believed her lies struggled to recover financially. Some marriages, fractured by the chaos she created, never healed. And me, I was left with the heavy reality of being both a survivor and a destroyer. I had pulled the trigger on her reputation, and while it was deserved, it felt like I had scorched more earth than I intended. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I had crossed a line somewhere along the way, if in my hunger to bring her down I had turned into something just as cruel. My brothers assured me I hadn't, that exposing the truth was the only option. "You didn't ruin her life," Marcus told me one evening over drinks. "She ruined her own. You just turned on the light." I wanted to believe him. In the quiet that followed the storm, I had to confront the wreckage within my own life. My career had taken a backseat to the chaos. My relationships had frayed. Friends I once trusted didn't know how to handle the intensity of what I had gone through, and some quietly drifted away. I couldn't even blame them. It was hard enough for me to sit with myself some days. So I rebuilt from the ground up. I dove back into my work, not just as a way to distract myself, but as a way to prove to myself, if not the world, that I wasn't defined by the pain Samantha had left behind. I started projects I had long put off, took risks I might have once shied away from. Slowly, piece by piece, I stitched together a version of life that felt like mine again. Therapy helped, sitting across from someone who didn't flinch at the darkest parts of the story, who reminded me that survival itself was an act of defiance, gave me room to breathe. "You're allowed to carry scars," my therapist said once. "Scars mean you healed, even if the wound changed you." And I had changed, there was no denying it. One of the strangest parts of this chapter of my life was what came months later. Letters. At first I ignored them, but then curiosity got the better of me. They were from Samantha, from prison. She wrote like nothing had happened between us, like she was still the victim of circumstance, still convinced she could manipulate her way back into someone's life. The words ranged from pitiful apologies to veiled threats, as if she were reminding me that her shadow still lingered, even behind bars. I didn't respond, I couldn't. The letters went into a shoebox in the back of my closet. A reminder, maybe, of why I couldn't let myself fall back into old patterns. A reminder that monsters don't always stay in the dark. Sometimes they write in neat cursive with hearts over their eyes. In time, the fear eased. The whispers faded. Life, as it tends to do, moved forward. But I was no longer the same man who had once believed in second chances without question, who had mistaken manipulation for love, who had let himself be blinded by charm. Now I carried caution with me like armor. I learned to read people in ways I never had before, to spot the red flags I once ignored. More than that, I learned the strength of boundaries, the power of saying no, the necessity of walking away when something felt wrong. For all the pain she caused, Samantha had unintentionally given me one gift: clarity. Looking back now, I don't romanticize the path I took. I don't pretend I was noble or blameless. I was angry. I was reckless. I was driven by a thirst for revenge that sometimes clouded my judgment. But I also know this: had I stayed silent, had I let her continue her web of lies unchecked, more people would have suffered. Families would have been destroyed. Innocent lives would have been collateral damage in her endless pursuit of power and profit. So maybe I wasn't a good person. Maybe I'm still not. But I was someone who refused to let evil hide in plain sight. And if that makes me flawed, so be it. Because in the end, this isn't a story about heroes or villains. It's a story about survival. About what happens when two broken people clash and one refuses to be broken again. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.